Good afternoon, grade 7. The purpose of this video today is I'm going to read chapters 6 and 7 of Love David to you. So you can get comfortable, you can just sit and relax and watch me while I read to you. And then I will give questions on it, but that will be in a document. But just for the purpose of this video, I just want to read to you. Okay, so let's go. So, Love David, chapter 6. Um, and just to recap quickly, by now you should know the interior of the Yankees' home. We realized that, or we saw that they have quite a small space that they live in, and it's really compact. So everything gets done in like one roomed space. So you can just imagine how cramped it must be at night when everybody has to sleep. So let's read chapter 6. The following evening, after a long day of worrying, I decided to talk to Dada about keeping Stumpy. He's infested with fleas, Dada said calmly. That's why he cries in his sleep, and that's why we can't keep him. But what will happen to him? I pleaded. The SPCA will have to find a home for him, he answered sharply, so closing the subject. Meanwhile, Opa said that he would keep the dog at his house. But every morning, as soon as we opened our door, there Stumpy would be, sitting on the step waiting for us. David, he would yap and jump about excitedly when he saw David, who would pick him up and take him for a walk. David had to be careful about Stumpy so as not to anger Dada, who must have decided to turn a blind eye to him. Mumsy told us to make sure that Stumpy never came into the house because Dada would blow his top. It seems we can keep him, I confided in David. He is full of fleas, David replied thoughtfully. Every afternoon for a full week, David and I would sit catching Stumpy's fleas. He would remove them from wiggling Stumpy's stomach one by one. It was easy to spot the black fleas in Stumpy's white fur. David would roll the flea between his right forefinger and his thumb and then place them in the lid of a jar which I held. I would crush them under my nail, spattering the blood that they had sucked from poor Stumpy. It's no use, David said when I appeared one morning with the lid of the jar. We need some flea powder. Buy some then, I said. I don't have any money, he replied, but I'll make a plan. David looked for an empty plastic bottle which he filled with water. He took two of baby's nappies from the line, and later on, we all took a walk to the robot at Prince George Drive. Stumpy, Baby, and I sat on the pavement while David washed the windows of motorists returning from work. Some of the motorists gave him a few coins. Some gave him their sandwiches, which they had not eaten that day, while others crossly shooed him away from their cars. He put the money in his pocket and handed me the sandwiches after a quick look at their contents. If he silently gave me a sandwich, it meant that I could have it. If he wanted one for himself, he'd say, "That's mine." I would keep that particular one aside for him. When the traffic became less, David decided that we could go home. But first he sat on the pavement and counted his money, beaming at his success. The following morning, David skipped school and took a bus to Weinberg. He returned a few hours later with what he had bought: a tin of flea powder and a leather collar for Stumpy, as well as a lip-smacking parcel of fish and chips, which he had bought at the fish shop near the bus terminus. Chapter 7. A blue combi came to the clearing near the camp on Sunday afternoons. The occupants the occupants' brothers and sisters would call them, who called themselves the wayside keepers, seekers, told us Bible stories and taught us choruses under the tall blue gum tree. After the services, we were all given a few sweets. Many children came to the services, even in the Muslim children. Some of the adults even attended, but stood shyly in the distance until one of the brothers or sisters called them to join in. The Wayside Sunday School was the highlight of the week for some children who dressed for the occasion. Others, like myself, came only for the sweets. This particular Sunday, the story was about David and Goliath. When the hero's name was mentioned, everyone looked at David, who pretended not to notice. After the service, David took a pair of Mumsy's pantyhose from the line and made a sling out of them. And we all took a walk to the fly to try it out. I had to carry baby, who was growing very heavy and naughty. She would cry for everything and everyone spoiled her. David bought her a lollipop every afternoon when he came from school. I tried to teach her to be good and smacked her little hands when we were alone in the mornings. Stumpy had also grown big. He was a cheeky, heavy, round ball and barked at everything and everyone. He was he was a hero among the other dogs who were always following him around the camp. We each had a chance to try the sling. We swung it around and flung it into the air. David and Opa threw the furthest, and Buddy J was not bad. Not but mine. David and Opa threw the furthest, and Buddy J was not bad but mine. Smell that braai, Opa said. Yes, David replied. It makes you hungry. Many people came to braai at the flay on Sunday afternoons. When they left, we would hunt through whatever they had left behind. Sometimes when we were lucky, we would find a whole bread roll with a piece of boerewors in it that some child had wasted, or perhaps a chop that had fallen in the sand and had been left. We often found the remains of a chop from which only the middle piece had been eaten, and watermelon peels which still had lots of red flesh left. Rich people are so wasteful, I said to Buddy J. Mumsy often says so. David and Opa collected cigarette ends that they could still smoke. Dusk was falling and all the visitors had left except a group of older teenagers who were sitting on swings. The faster you swing the sling, the further it will fall, Opa said to David. David swung the sling around and around until it whistled and then he hurled it through the air. The stone hit one of the teenagers before landing next to the swing. David rushed over to apologize and to get the sling back. Before he could say a word, the older boy ran up to him and smacked his face so hard that his nose began to bleed. Through tear-filled eyes, David glared at him while taking a few steps backwards. Like lightning, he darted forward and knocked the lanky boy to the ground. He jumped on him and in a fit of temper smacked him in the face with his right hand. With his right hand, with his left, spilling the blood from his bleeding nose all over the boy. Twang, 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 twang. I started crying as I saw the others approach and haul David off their friend. Baby perched on my hip was crying too. At once Opa appeared, waving his stick through the air. Comrades, he shouted. Comrades, make peace, brothers. The other boys looked at one another and at Opa. They slowly released David. They hit one another's hands to show comradeship. David reluctantly did the same, but I saw a look of revenge in his eyes. He was not done with them yet. He silently took my hand and walked off to the tap together, leaving Opa and Buddy J talking to their newfound comrades. David pulled off his shirt and washed the blood out of it. He washed his face and also mine and baby's. Opa and Buddy J were approaching. Opa knows them, Buddy J shouted excitedly. The one's brother used to broke With my cousin, Oupa explained. David was not impressed and showed no reaction. Besides, he did not believe anything Oupa said. Oupa had once told us the story of the flay's name. You must never swim in the flay, he had said authoritatively. It haunts. He had pointed to a beautiful white water lily in full bloom. Do you see that? He asked. That is the spirit of the princess who lived many years ago. She used to come to the flay to swim. One day she saw a beautiful water lily and reached out to pick it. The lily seemed slowly to wade out of her reach, but she wanted it, so she waded out for it, after it. Slowly reaching the middle of the flay, then she and the water lily suddenly vanished. She was never seen again, but comes back every year as a water lily to lure people into the flay. That story really upset me, but when I told David about it, he said that I mustn't believe everything that Opa said. You can thank your lucky stars that Opa knew the comrades Buddy J was saying, hopping alongside us. Ach, shut up, David said. That was chapter 6 and chapter 7. So, you are going to have to answer the comprehension questions after you've watched this video. And I think I enjoyed reading that, so I'm sure you enjoyed it too. So, just answer the questions that relates to chapter 6 and 7.